All right. Hey, everybody. So today's episode is going to be pretty straightforward. And the long story short is that, I came out as a quote accelerationist, which is more or less just a meme. But the idea is that I am a, techno optimist, and I am looking forward to some of the changes that technology will bring. And what I wanted to talk about specifically today was how we, you and me, and if you're listening to this, you are part of this conversation, how we can accelerate AI adoption and deployment. Now, one of the key things that I have been talking about for a long time, more than a year since I first proposed this model, and since then, more data has come out, stuff that has been shared with me privately, some research that is publicly available, and so on and so forth. So, the biggest constraint to AI adoption right now is basically, I'm not going to call it AI skepticism, but it's basically the fact that it is so new that nobody really knows how to deploy it and nobody knows what to expect from it. And so, an example is some research that was shared with me. Was basically it was a large scale survey of different companies. I think it was mostly enterprises. Anyways, companies that the very short TLDR is that companies that created an AI COE or center of excellence found that having that centralized approach was actually more obstructive than just allowing empowering people to explore AI in a more organic, decentralized manner. So in particular, by empowering product leaders, so that's product owners, program managers, product managers, and those sorts of things. So basically empowering your product team above centralized management of the deployment and rollout of AI is the best way to go. So that is like upfront in the first 2 minutes of this episode, you have the core thesis is that a center of excellence is not the right way to go, at least not at the beginning. So this goes back to the crawl, walk, run, fly model that I proposed more than a year ago, about a year and a half ago. And so for some context, at the time, I was actually a full-time consultant and YouTuber. I was consulting with small and medium businesses and a few enterprises on the adoption of generative AI technology, specifically language models, chatbots, and those sorts of things, Copilot, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the crawl, walk, run, fly model basically says this is the correct order of maturity in which to adopt artificial intelligence. So the crawl phase is where you are taking an exploratory and discovery, kind of a blue ocean mindset. One of the biggest problems that I saw in my consulting time was that a lot of people wanted to jump into the deep end. So I remember one consultation call I had, they said, well, we want to deploy agents. And this was before agents were even really a thing. And I said, okay, have you deployed any generative AI whatsoever? Are you using ChatGPT on a regular basis? No. I said, okay, you're not ready to deploy agents because you don't even know the first thing about what this technology can do. That consultation relationship didn't last long because I gave them news that they didn't want to hear. They just, it's like that old Dilbert comic where it's like, I think we need SQL servers, and of course SQL is just a database. And Dilbert says, okay, what color SQL server do you want? And the manager is like, Malve. I've heard that Malve is the best. And of course, like that's completely nonsense. Like SQL servers don't come in different colors. So there's a lot of executive leadership. They just know the buzz is there, the hype is there, and we need to do generative AI. They don't know what it means. In some cases, I talked with CEOs or other business leaders that were using ChatGPT on the regular, and they wanted help with onboarding their employees. How do you use it? What do you use it for? And that sort of thing. But yeah, so a lot of people want to jump into the deep end, and it kind of makes sense. Like if you have a large enterprise, or even doesn't even have to be like hyperscale. I'm not talking like global enterprise, but I mean like let's say you have 500 to 5,000 employees, give or take, maybe a little bit more or less. You're probably going to have a cloud strategy, and so cloud has been like kind of the last decade's big technology, buzzword trend. There was big data, and then there was cloud, right? And so what many companies would do is they would end up creating a cloud center of excellence. And so this is, your top team, your crack team, basically your special forces that are going to be, they're going to own all the best practices and set the strategy for the whole company. Now that makes sense, but remember it also took, 5, 10, 15 years to get to that point, to that level of maturity, where not only was the industry itself mature enough, but also all the best practices and all the engineers and leaders and architects were also mature enough to have a center of excellence. The problem with jumping the gun and saying we're going to build a center of excellence for artificial intelligence right now is that, number one, the industry is not that mature. Number two, the individual contributors are not that mature. And I'm not saying that that's a flaw with any individual. The point is, though, that everything is being worked on as we're like in real time. So the products and services are not there. The best practices and industry knowledge is not there. And your individual contributors are also just not trained up by virtue of the fact that this technology is brand new. Okay, so going back to that crawl phase. Sorry, I got on a little bit of a tangent there. So the crawl phase is where you, first and foremost, you need to make sure that you do not have any expectation of value. One of the chief problems is that people are looking for quick wins. They're looking for immediate ROI. This has actually been borne out in the data quite a bit, where you have these top-down edicts like start using generative AI. I read that it increases productivity 30%, and so you have these heavy-handed top-down orders coming from your C-suite or your directors or whatever, and the expectation is that your employees who view this technology suspiciously, have not been enabled, have not been empowered, and have not been onboarded, will just suddenly magically figure out how to improve their productivity by 30%. And what happens actually is in companies where they have these top-down edicts or dictums, they actually end up suffering. Their productivity goes down because it's like, okay, we're trying to shoehorn in this technology, but we don't know how to use it. It's not being used properly, and it's just some big idea that some middle manager or higher up just believes that it's going to have that effect. And so then what happens is everyone in the organization is angry about AI. Everyone is suspicious. Everyone is skeptical. And then the executive leadership just concludes, well, it's not ready yet. It's no good. It hallucinates and blah blah blah. It's actually worse for productivity. And so that's what happens with central management. So crawl is empower everyone to explore, to just guess, to say, hey, I know that you're using it at home. I know your kids are using it. Whether you're an individual contributor or a product owner or whatever, just start playing with it. No pressure, no expectation of value. And so you might say, well, how do you measure what the result is? Why is this valuable if there's no KPI, if there's no ROI on it? And the KPI here is familiarity. It's like, go back to when email was new, go back to when internet was new. And people would just kind of futz around with it. You get on Google and you start, oh, look at this. There's a website for, Aladdin, or, it was like 1994 was I think that was one of Disney's first websites. Those sorts of things. You just futz around with it. You just play with it. You build familiarity. You build confidence. And more importantly, by removing the pressure of expectation of value, then what you're doing is you're engaging curiosity. So the cardinality is ignore value, focus on curiosity. And many employees and many employers as well will not know how to handle this because we are so thoroughly brainwashed by the cult of productivity that the idea that, that while you're on the clock, if you do something for the fun of it, if you follow your curiosity, then then that is actually a valuable use of time. So many people that I've consulted with and talked to, they're like, yeah, but how do you measure it? What is the expectation? And then I can't tell you the number of calls that were a one-off because they didn't like that answer. Because they said, look, you don't know what you're doing. Your employees don't know what they're doing. and you don't even know what this technology is capable of or what it is not capable of. You need to play with it. Like, this stuff is not documented. There's not a book you can pick up that will talk about this stuff yet. And most of the books that you will pick up are just basic prompt engineering books. And so, because this is a brand new blue ocean, you need to have that discovery, that exploration, that curiosity mindset, and that is the crawl phase. Now, you might say, okay, well, how do you know when you're done with this? When you get bored. The number one signal, or I guess the tension is between curiosity and boredom. And so your brain, your big hominid brain, looks for novelty. Novelty has potential value, and so when you start to get bored of just exploring and tinkering and poking at things, then that means that the amount of novelty has worn off. That means that you're not seeing anything new. And so once you're bored, now it is time for your individual contributors and your product owners and whoever else to move on to the walk phase. And the walk phase is where you actually try and add value. This is the first phase where you basically try and find one tool or one way of using one tool, or you start to build one tool that solves one problem. And so what you're looking for is, the kind of the mantra that I use is better, faster, cheaper, safer. So there is going to be some tool or maybe set of tools that produces measurable gains. And so this is where KPI and ROI starts to figure in. So better, faster, cheaper, and safer. Ideally, you get all four of those, but in most cases, you'll get one or two, maybe three. Now, let me give you an example of better, faster, cheaper, and safer. So I just wrote and published my debut novel. Now, it's not the first novel I wrote, but it's the first one that I'm publishing. Now, writing the text, that I can do just fine. However, I'm not an artist. And so the cover art and the back cover art was something that I would have needed to commission humans to do. Now, initially, when I started working on this novel, AI-generated art was not a thing. So the first couple of book covers that I did myself, and they were not that great. I used some stock footage and just layered some stuff together and made some compositions, using Photoshop, simple stuff. Not the best, but it would have been passable. Fast forward some, and I wanted to really take my book seriously, and so I hired human artists. I went and found a commission artist, and I paid about $1,800 for custom cover art. It took it took about a month, I will say, all told, because she had quite a backlog of work to work on, and then there were some changes to make. So $1,800 over a month, and then as time moved forward, AI generated art got better, and then DALL-E came out, and I was able to brainstorm some ideas. DALL-E 2 was really a game changer, and then Midjourney was even better. And so then finally, I was like, okay, cool. Let me just brainstorm some ideas about this cover art. So rather than having to do a bunch of thinking ahead and comparing and analyzing what works out there, because here's the thing. When you have an artifact that you need that takes about a month to produce, planning is really important because you can't quickly iterate on it. However, with AI-generated art, I was able to just quickly iterate. I was able to post image polls on LinkedIn and my YouTube channel, and I was able to get people to vote on which art did you like better, which one stood out most. And that's all you need, because you say, hey, which one grabs your eye more? And so I ended up quickly zeroing in on a completely different style, a different motif of the art, and it really stuck. And so, well, if I was able to, quickly workshop which one would work better with AI, why not just use AI to make the final art? And so then I had a second artist create another version. And so then I did some A/B testing between two human artists, and then also the human artist and the AI art. And guess what? The AI generated art market tested way better than the human artists. So now I have something that is measurable, because Midjourney is much cheaper and much faster, and also better than human artists. So that is the walk phase. That is an example of how finding a place, a particular function, rather than just kind of a blanket, saying, hey, everyone use ChatGPT and Midjourney now. I heard that it's good. It's like, no, I actually found one specific place in my hobby, in my side business or whatever, where AI makes absolute perfect sense. Now you might say, well, what about using AI to write or edit or whatever? Having been using these tools for a while, AI is no good at editing. It is trained to be too generic. It also doesn't have that emotional resonance. It doesn't actually know what is standing out. And also the mythic, like universal themes, AI still can't pick up on. And like if you ask it, it's like, sure, like this seems like a good theme, but it has no emotional valence to say this is what actually resonated with me. So human editors are still far better than AI editors. Now, what I will say is that that AI can help with like paragraph level prose. So if you need help just like rewriting one paragraph, like help me figure out this paragraph, it's really good at syntax and execution on that scale. But anything up to scene level, it doesn't understand scenes, it doesn't understand chapters, and it's sure as hell doesn't understand whole books. Trust me, I've tried. However, AI is really good at cover art. At least, this year. Maybe it'll be different next year. So that's an example of the walk phase. And then the run phase is where you start to operationalize this, where you take the lessons that you have learned from finding one or two tools or one or two places where you have value, and you say, okay, we have one win. We have seen empirically that AI can save us, thousands of dollars or save us, weeks of time on this one particular function. So then you start to find more. You start to operationalize it. You start to train people up. You start to have people whose job it is specifically to do this, whether it is building automation tool chains or pipelines, or maybe you have people that are specifically for training other people saying, hey, let's replicate this success. And that is the run phase. So the transition from crawl to walk. So when you're bored of crawling, then it's time to walk. And that's, stepping out of your comfort zone. The transition from walk to, crawl to walk, walk to run. The transition from walking to running is once you have really stuck the landing on one tool. When you say, yes, I have proven that AI can add value to my life, to my business, to my job, whatever it is. Because, by the way, the crawl, walk, run, fly model applies to individuals. It also applies to businesses. So when you have stuck the landing on one single tool, one thing that saves you hours or days or weeks or saves you hundreds of dollars or whatever, some kind of measurable result, then it's time to transition to run, which is where you step out of your comfort zone again and you say, let's find more tools, let's automate more, let's squeeze as much value out of these technologies as we can, and you start to generalize those principles. So once you get to that point, you're running with AI. And running with AI is where you're going to really start to build up momentum because, in the walk phase, saving a few $1,000s on one task, yeah, that's, you can write home about that. But if you have, millions in revenue, it's really not going to really move the needle a whole lot for your whole organization. You're not going to get that, 30% boost in productivity across the board. However, with the run phase, this is where you become much more systematic about, okay, let's this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we actually start to measure, start to understand how AI is impacting our processes, our business, our job, whatever it is that you're doing, and you start to really measure it. So here's an example of, something that might happen during the run phase. Imagine that you take your developers, your IT department, basically the tech side of your business, and you say, okay, guys, we've been using AI for a few months now. The expectation now is that if you are in infrastructure or IT or other technology, you will be learning to code with this. You'll be learning to script, and we will start to automate more. That's one example where you say, okay, we've got this backlog. Let's automate the backlog. Conversely, let's say that you're working a bunch of tickets, like whether you have call centers, data center tickets, help desk tickets, those sorts of things. One of the kind of goals or KPI that you might have at this point is MTTX. So MTTX is mean time to resolution, mean time to diagnosis, and mean time to service restored. So MTTX is just mean time to some kind of result. Now, if you're embedding technologies such as like ChatGPT or Claude, then what you can do is what am I trying to say? You're trying to shorten MTTX in all ways. And so you could say, okay, in aggregate, the expectation is now that you guys are all using AI, all of your tickets get resolved faster, all of your projects get done faster, that sort of thing. And of course, time is money. So that's just one example. Now, if you take it over to the marketing side, you might say, hey, you guys have access to AI image generators. You guys have access to AI, tools for writing copy. Let's automate the A/B testing of that copy and those images, those sorts of things. So that would be the run phase. And then finally, once your whole organization is getting up to speed and you're starting to develop in-house expertise, because this is the number one thing, you're building maturity and expertise internally. Once you have people that have percolated to the top, whether they are individual contributors, technical leaders, or managers, ideally all of the above, who are your A team, kind of your go-to team for AI, now finally at the end under the fly, this is when it's time to build that center of excellence. And these are the people who over the past 6 months to 2 years or however long you've been working on building AI maturity, these are the people that you say, okay, you know this business, you know artificial intelligence, you are now the leaders of our center of excellence. Now you're ready for establishing best practices and that centralized authority saying, we know how AI runs this business, we know how AI adds value to this business. So that is the crawl, walk, run, fly model of artificial intelligence adoption and maturity. And I hope that this makes sense for you, that it's a nice, clear, and simple framework for adoption, because my goal here is to get AI out in industry as much as possible and as fast as possible, because the more that people are using AI, the more consensus that we have on its economic productivity, the more robust our economic and scientific progress will be from here on out. So thanks for listening. Cheers.